Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk live co-host, NBC Football Night in America, and one of the most knowledgeable football people we have doing this, joining us on the program. Fritzy and I had a debate. I don't want to say it was a heated debate, but we had a debate about the philanthropic Aaron Rodgers giving back to the Jets here. Fritzy thinks that somehow, somewhere down the road, Rodgers will get that money back. I thought it's still a nice gesture to give the Jets $35 million back. Help us understand what Rodgers is doing, and is it honorable?
Fritzy's instincts are right. I've got a theory on this. And since I've been labeled one of the top 5 conspiracy theorists in the NFL, I have to work hard to continue to hold that status. Here's what I think is going to happen. And this all comes from, and I'll give you the chain of events. Ben Fisher of Sports Business Journal reported on Tuesday afternoon, evening that the NFL last week passed a rule preventing owners from giving equity to players or other employees. In the aftermath of that report surfacing, I talked to some people and I learned that as Aaron Rodgers was reconfiguring his contract with the Jets, Dan, he was trying to get equity in the franchise. My theory is this $33.7 million gift to Woody Johnson, which is exactly what it is. Because look, Dan, they could have found a way to move money around and load up the team this year and next year, and they could have dealt with the salary cap issues after Rodgers was long gone. This gift, I predict, 5, 6, 7 years down the road, will result in Aaron Rodgers being sold a small percentage of the New York Jets. Book it now. I predict it will happen later.
Well, I won't be doing this.
I saw that.
Yeah, I'll be retired by then. So Fritzy and I guess we'll have an argument over the phone maybe. But he could have kept his deal, though, Mike. Right?
Oh, he could have. He could have. And look, Dan, I'd been plugged into this for months. From the point that Rodgers unexpectedly took a $58 million option bonus that was due this year, moved it to next year to give the Packers, the team that he supposedly hates, at least the front office, some cap relief on his way out the door. And the Jets and Rodgers had to figure out how they're going to reallocate that money. I had heard that he was possibly going to take less money from the Jets than he was supposed to make this year and next year from the Packers. And I think the strategy here is, and we have to assume Aaron Rodgers is smart, so he's strategic. You ingratiate yourself to the team, to the locker room, to the front office, to the fan base, to the media. And the thinking is you appear to be unselfish. You appear to be a guy who's helping the team, and you make it all back one way or the other. Sponsorship deals, appreciation of the percentage you buy down the road, whatever it is, you're going to make that $33.7 million back at some point down the road. And I think that's part of his calculation. He'll get that back and then some, and he rides into New York and he stays the hero. And everyone's going to go easy on him. And everyone's going to praise him. And no one's ever going to ask him a tough question because he's such a great guy who took $33.7 million less.
Any other quarterbacks doing this?
Well, I mean, Patrick Mahomes isn't a roundabout way. Patrick Mahomes is content to be grossly underpaid, and Chiefs fans just love it when I point that out. But Mahomes 3 years ago was the highest paid quarterback at $45 million. Now you've got Justin Herbert at $52.5. It's just a matter of time before Joe Burrow goes higher than Herbert. Mahomes, meanwhile, seems to be content to be underpaid. And Tom Brady's the guy that got all this started, being underpaid to help with the construction of the team. And this is where the system is rigged against the great quarterbacks, because they make the game go. They are worth more to the league than they are to their individual teams. Well, how do they pick the primetime games every year? By where the quarterbacks are going to be. So if we had a chance to do it all over again, I think you should have a league-wide fund that pays the great quarterbacks because they mean more to the shield than they do to their teams. And the salary cap gets used as leverage to get them to take less in the hopes of winning.
Yeah, we've proposed that for a while now, that just have a separate salary cap for your quarterbacks. Or can we do something with the running backs that we start them out with a 3-year deal? Or we let them leave college after their sophomore year? Is there any solution that would help everybody and the owners don't go, we're still not paying?
Well, don't tell Jim Irsay. He's already making
God.
it clear that nothing will be done, which isn't going to help the cause. He would have been better off saying nothing because these guys are mad. And if you have an owner saying things like he said last night on Twitter, they're only going to get more upset. This is an organic realization by the running backs that the system screws them. The weirdest part about this, Dan, this has been the case for 15 years that running backs have been taken advantage of by the system.
When did it start, Mike? Well, do you remember?
I asked someone last week, what's the root cause of this issue? Somebody who's been involved in the league at a high level for a long time with one of the teams. And I was told, blame analytics and Mike Shanahan. Go all the way back to 1999. Terrell Davis tears his ACL. Olandis Gary comes in and has 1,100 plus rushing yards in 1999. 2000, I don't know what happened to Olandis Gary, but Mike Anderson has 1,400 rushing yards in that system. It's the system that makes it go. So you can throw a rock and find a running back who can come in and make it happen. Every major college every year has a running back that could play running back at the NFL level. The supply outweighs the demand. You throw on top of that this analytics obsession with surplus value. Where's the surplus value? Not at the running back position. It's at quarterback, receiver, pass rusher, and corner. That's it. The other positions are viewed as interchangeable. So it's hard for the great players to get paid. And for running backs, by the time you're 27, 28 years old, you've got a lot of mileage. You're expecting a lot of money. There's younger and cheaper guys out there. That's how it all happened. What's amazing is finally the running backs are standing up and saying, this is unacceptable. I just don't know what they can do about it.
They can't do anything. And we were just talking about this, that people go, well, you bargained for this collective bargaining agreement. You can't slip in language that says, and by the way, can we have running backs be paid commensurate to wide receivers? It doesn't happen. The owners aren't going to let you. You could try to put that in there, but that's not going to happen. They took years trying to get marijuana testing taken out of the NFL. I don't think you're going to slip in a clause that said, hey, running backs are grossly underpaid. We get it, but, quarterbacks are not grossly underpaid, or wide receivers aren't, defensive tackles aren't, left tackles aren't. It's just middle linebackers and running backs are underpaid.
Dan, here's the problem. The union is hopelessly conflicted here because it represents all shapes and sizes of players. So you rob Peter to pay Paul. If you're going to help the running backs, if you're going to get the league to do something to improve running back pay, the league's going to say, what's in it for us? What are you giving us in return? You may hurt some other position as you try to maintain that balance between labor and management. Running backs arguably should have their own union. There was an effort in Chicago 4 years ago to create a running back bargaining unit. It went nowhere. That's one way to do this. Dan, the other thing you do, and I don't know that this will ever work, but this is the best thing that I've managed to come up with. If all the running backs would get together now, and if they would get all running backs currently in the league and all agents to commit that next year's crop of running backs will go along with this. If they say next year for the offseason program, you're not going to have a single running back present on any team. And if they can sell that as something they can pull off, and I don't think they can pull it off, but if they could pull that off, that would be a way to get the league's attention and maybe get them to figure out something. And this is a Chris Sims solution. You may have mentioned it on your show earlier this week. The idea of having a league-wide fund of money that pays running backs for performance, because they do their best work when they're under peanuts deals in comparison to what veteran players make. Pay them then, when they have 1,500 rushing yards and 15 rushing touchdowns.
Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk Live co-host. Is the NFL done with Daniel Snyder?
Well, I think there's one open issue as far as the NFL is related, and this dawned on me last night. The finding from Mary Jo White's report that the Commanders essentially moved revenue around from NFL events to non-NFL events at FedEx Field, concerts, college football games, in order to avoid sharing money with the teams. That money also would have gone into the pot that determines the salary cap. So the NFL Players Association may have something to say about this. And when I read that report last week, Dan, it was clear to me that Mary Jo White was providing a blueprint for a prosecution under Virginia, Maryland, or federal law. Each one potentially would have some degree of jurisdiction. I don't know what's going to happen if there's going to be a prosecution, if the statutes of limitations haven't expired. But she basically found fraudulent conduct. She never used the word fraud, but she found fraud. And if you do any research of the laws out there, and it's all available to anyone who's curious, there are laws in every state, many laws against fraud, and people get prosecuted for fraudulent schemes all the time. So the NFL may be done with him, but the NFLPA may have something to say, and there may be some aggressive prosecutors out there taking a look at Mary Jo White's report.
Dalvin Cook visiting the Jets. Your thoughts?
Well, they got some extra money thanks to Aaron Rodgers now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And his cap number, if he hadn't redone his deal before he left the Packers, his cap number would have been $15 million or so when the Jets acquired him. His cap number now is about $8 million. So there's $7 million right there they didn't expect to have. And Breece Hall, who was off to a great start last year as a rookie, he tore his ACL. They're not 100% certain he's going to be ready to go week one, or he's going to be the guy he was last year. And Dalvin Cook's available, and they're all in, and they could pull that off. And really, at the end of the day, this is 33. You know how good you feel when you find a $20 bill and a pair of pants you haven't worn in 3 months? Woody Johnson found $33.7 million in a pair of pants today. He's got plenty of money to go get Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, because Aaron Rodgers is very generous.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Is that a charitable deduction? Like, is that a write-off for Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah. I mean, it's not a write-off because it was never in. He just gave it up. But yeah, he should have found some other way to manage his tax bracket. But again, it'll all work out when he owns 1.327% of the New York Jets 7 years from now.
Do you hate Aaron Rodgers?
No, I don't, Harry. I have a ton of respect for Aaron Rodgers. I like the fact that there's kind of a healthy disagreement from afar. I think he may disagree with me on this. I think he and I have a lot more in common than anyone ever realizes. And I don't think he would ever agree with that, not even in one respect.
Okay. If you had to bet on coaches getting fired mid-season, we had 3 last year.
Mid-season. Well, depending upon what happens with the Chargers, it wouldn't stun me. This new deal for Justin Herbert just puts more pressure on Brandon Staley. Yeah. And what did we last see from Brandon Staley? A playoff appearance and a historic flameout against the Jaguars where they blew a 28-point lead. So I think he's got a ton of pressure on him going into the season. Look, there's always going to be a team that stumbles out of the gates. What does the owner do when you're 0-4, 1-5, 2-7? And you had all those expectations not all that long ago to be a competitive team. So it all comes down to how the owner is wired and what the owner decides to do in that stress and strain of the moment. But I'd be very nervous this year if I'm Brandon Staley, because all that money to Justin Herbert, if it doesn't work this year, it's not like they're getting rid of Herbert. They're getting rid of me. And there's coaches already circling that Chargers job. They were doing it last year, Dan. The coaches who are eyeballing NFL jobs, they want to work with the franchise quarterback. They want to work with Justin Herbert.
Well, Sean Payton.
He would have taken. I mean, I don't know this, but between Broncos and Chargers, if both jobs are open, you're taking the Chargers job if you're Sean Payton.
Yeah. I said this earlier. What is considered a great season for the Jets? Like that. Or maybe what would be a bad season for the Jets?
Not making the playoffs.
Okay, let's say they make the playoffs. I said if you do one and done, then you didn't have a great year.
I would agree with that, especially because that's been the Aaron Rodgers flaw. Failure to deliver in the postseason. Great in the regular season. The playoffs come around, and this is one of Sim's complaints about Aaron Rodgers, not mine. So, Aaron, don't blame me for this one. Sims believes that when the season is riding on that one game in January, Rodgers is too careful. Rodgers doesn't let it rip. Rodgers is too concerned about throwing an interception that he doesn't just go out and play the way that he did from week 1 through week 18. And there's too many times they've been the 1 seed. They've lost at home. I mean, it goes all the way back to 2011. The year after they won the Super Bowl, they were the 1 seed, and the Giants went into Lambeau Field and beat them. We saw them lose to the 49ers at Lambeau Field. They lost to the Buccaneers the year before that. Both years, Aaron Rodgers was the league MVP. So he's got to deliver when it's one and done pressure. But first, they got to get there, Dan. And I apologize if I'm repeating myself of something I said on your show before. Look at the schedules of the teams in the AFC East. They play each other twice. They play every team from the AFC West. They play every team from the NFC East. If you don't win that division, you may not get in because you're going to be compared then to the second and third place teams from the other divisions that have easier schedules. It's going to be very hard for the second place team in the AFC East to get in. So if the Jets don't win the division, they may not get in.
I know. I brought that up after you had mentioned that, because sometimes we just look at a team and look at the talent and we go, oh, you can pencil in 11 wins. And then I always say, look at the schedule and see if you can pencil in 11 or 12 wins there. And when you start to look at who you have to play, there's no gimmies. Used to be with the Patriots, the rest of the division was a gimme. And you'd be like, all right, let me lock in 6 wins here. Well, that's not the case anymore. So I think there's 11 wins would be a good start for the Jets.
You look at that schedule. Where are 11 wins? And you could argue their week 1 game at home against the Bills is the most important game of the year, because if they lose that one to the Bills, then they have to go play in Buffalo later in the year. You get swept by the Bills, you ain't winning that division. You got to make up 3 games the rest of the year to catch and pass the Bills. So they need to hold serve in those legacy white uniforms that you can buy wherever your equipment is sold. Please go buy more, because Woody Johnson made $33.7 million yesterday,
God.
but he'd surely like to make a lot more. But that week 1 game, critical. And we're going to know a lot about the Jets by the time it's week 4 when the Chiefs come to town.
Who do you think dislikes Aaron Rodgers more, Fritzy or Mike Florio? Paulie?
Clearly, Fritzy. Mike's using it as a tool, and it's working well for him.
Okay.
Thank you.
But Mike, then you're saying Mike just called Aaron Rodgers a tool.
No, Rodgers would call Florio a tool.
That's what I took from that. Seton, who do you think dislikes Aaron Rodgers more?
I'm going to go Mike, actually.
Okay.
I'm going to go Mike.
Okay.
Yeah.
Marvin?
I'm going to go Fritzy.
Okay. So we're split here.
Dan, what's your vote?
I'm going to go Fritzy.
Okay.
I think you're Skip Baylessing Aaron Rodgers the way Skip does LeBron James.
You know, if I didn't have so much respect for you and so much appreciation for what you've done for my career,
I apologize.
I would turn off my computer right now and never
apologize.
talk to you.
I mean, there's no reason to get nasty.
I apologize. I apologize.
That's all right.
Mike, thanks for joining us.
Good talking to you.
That's Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk. the look on Mike's face when I said you're Skip Baylessing Aaron Rodgers the way Skip does LeBron James.
That's great.
And his face sort of was like, what?